Kindness is a quality that we often associate with warmth, compassion, and human goodness. It's seen as the root of strong relationships and a better, more connected society. But there's a side to kindness that's rarely acknowledged, a side where kindness can actually lead to self-sacrifice, emotional burnout, and even the loss of identity. In a world that often demands selflessness, many of us forget that kindness, when given without boundaries, can have serious consequences. Instead of strengthening you, kindness that is too abundant or unchecked can weigh you down, leaving you vulnerable to being used by others and feeling unfulfilled in the relationships you thought were meaningful. When kindness becomes a central part of your identity, it's easy for people to start taking you for granted. Imagine that you're the friend who is always there, the co-worker who never says no to a request, or a family member who is endlessly supportive. At first, people may appreciate your kindness, thank you, or express their gratitude. But over time, they might start to expect it without acknowledging it. People begin to rely on your kindness as if it was something they're entitled to, not a gift that you choose to give. Your acts of generosity lose their uniqueness, and people may start treating your kindness as a given rather than something special. In this situation, your kindness turns from an act of choice into an obligation, a weight you carry because others expect it. And as this expectation grows, you may find yourself unable to say no, even when you feel drained or need a break. The psychological effects of being taken for granted in this way are profound. It's natural to want to be valued and appreciated for who you are, not just what you can do for others. But when kindness becomes an expectation, it often overshadows other aspects of your identity. People may no longer see you as a complex person with your own needs, desires, and limitations. Instead, they see you as a resource. This reduction of your identity to a single trait, kindness, can lead to a sense of invisibility. You might start to feel like you're only noticed when you're doing something for others. This invisibility can foster feelings of loneliness and isolation, as though people only value you when you're serving their needs. Over time, this can lead to bitterness and resentment, especially if you start to feel that your kindness isn't truly valued, that people only see you as a means to their own ends. This expectation of kindness also creates an imbalance in your relationships. Healthy relationships are built on mutual respect, where both people give and receive, supporting each other in equal measure. However, when you're always giving, the balance shifts. Instead of a two-way street, the relationship becomes one-sided, where you're constantly pouring energy into others, but rarely receiving anything in return. This imbalance can lead to feelings of exhaustion and depletion. You might start feeling as though you're the one who is making the effort, always extending yourself, while others simply take. This can be especially damaging when it happens in close relationships, friendships, family bonds, or romantic partnerships. Instead of feeling supported, you feel burdened, as though you're carrying the weight of the relationship alone. And as this dynamic continues, you may start to feel that you're being used rather than genuinely cared for. Another consequence of unchecked kindness is the erosion of self-worth. Every time you prioritize others over yourself, you're sending a message to your own mind that your needs are less important. At first, the self-sacrifice may feel like an act of nobility, a sign that you're a good person who cares deeply about others. But over time, this mindset can become toxic. You might begin to internalize the belief that you're only valuable when you're helping others, that your worth is defined by what you can give, not who you are. This loss of self-worth can manifest in various ways. You may feel uncomfortable asserting your own needs, fearing that doing so would make you selfish. You might even start to feel guilty for taking time for yourself, as though you're betraying others by not always being available. This guilt can trap you in a cycle of self-neglect, where you constantly give to others but never to yourself, leading to a profound sense of emptiness. Unchecked kindness also has a significant impact on mental and emotional health. Imagine a life where you're always available for others, always willing to help, and constantly putting others' needs above your own. This kind of lifestyle is incredibly draining, leaving little room for self-care or relaxation. When you're always on, always ready to give, it's easy to become overwhelmed. You may find yourself dealing with chronic stress, anxiety, or even depression as you struggle to meet everyone else's needs while neglecting your own. Burnout is a common result of this relentless giving. When you're always extending yourself for others, you rarely have time to recharge, leaving you in a state of constant exhaustion. This emotional and physical toll can make even the simplest task feel insurmountable, as though you're dragging yourself through life with no energy left to enjoy it. In trying to be endlessly kind, you end up depleting the very reserves that kindness requires. This burnout is exacerbated by the fact that excessive kindness often prevents people from setting boundaries. Boundaries are essential for emotional health. They help you define what is acceptable and protect you from overextending yourself. However, when kindness becomes a primary trait, boundaries often disappear. You might feel obligated to say yes to every request, even if it's inconvenient or emotionally draining. You may struggle to assert yourself, fearing that setting limits would make you seem unkind or selfish. But without boundaries, kindness becomes a doorway through which others can walk freely, often without consideration for your well-being. This lack of boundaries can make you vulnerable to exploitation. People may come to see you as someone they can always rely on, someone who will never say no, and they may take advantage of this. Over time, this dynamic becomes a trap, where you're constantly giving without any way to protect yourself from burnout or emotional harm. In addition to these personal consequences, excessive kindness can also affect your ability to handle conflict. When kindness is prioritized above all else, you may find yourself avoiding any situation that could lead to confrontation or disagreement. You might be so focused on keeping the peace that you ignore problems, hoping they'll resolve themselves. However, avoiding conflict doesn't make issues go away. It often makes them worse. When you fail to address problems directly, they fester, growing into larger issues that become more difficult to resolve. If someone oversteps a boundary or treats you unfairly, you might feel unable to confront them, fearing that doing so would make you seem unkind. This reluctance to address problems creates a buildup of unresolved issues, leading to frustration and resentment. Instead of resolving conflicts, you allow them to simmer, creating tension that undermines the very relationships you're trying to preserve. This avoidance of conflict also leads to a loss of authenticity. When you're constantly focused on being nice or pleasant, you may begin to hide your true feelings or this can create a sense of disconnection from yourself, as though you're always putting on a mask for others. Instead of being honest, you present a version of yourself that you think others want to see, a version that is agreeable, accommodating, and always kind. But this lack of authenticity can lead to a profound sense of loneliness. When you're not true to yourself, you may feel isolated, as though people only know a version of you that isn't real. This disconnection from your true self can be incredibly painful, as you may feel that people love the kind version of you, but don't truly know who you are. In trying to be kind, you've sacrificed your own identity, creating a divide between the person you are and the person you present to the world. Moreover, when kindness doesn't lead to the positive outcomes you expect, it can create feelings of disappointment and bitterness. There's often an assumption that kindness will be met with kindness, that if you're good to others, they'll be good to you in return. But reality doesn't always align with this belief. Sometimes people may react negatively to kindness or view it with suspicion. They may see your kindness as an attempt to manipulate or control, or they may feel uncomfortable and defensive. When kindness doesn't produce the connection or gratitude you hope for, it can be disheartening. You might feel as though your efforts were wasted, that your kindness didn't make any difference. This disappointment can lead to cynicism, where you begin to question the value of kindness altogether. Instead of feeling fulfilled, you feel empty, as though your kindness has left you with nothing. Ultimately, kindness, when balanced and reciprocated, is a powerful force for connection, empathy, and community. It can bring people closer, foster mutual respect, and create a sense of belonging. But when kindness is excessive, when it's given without limits or boundaries, it can become a source of suffering. True kindness is not about endless self-sacrifice. It's about finding a balance. It requires an understanding that kindness, to be meaningful, must be sustainable. This means knowing when to give and when to hold back, when to help others and when to care for yourself. By setting boundaries, asserting your needs, and recognizing your own worth, you can ensure that kindness remains a positive force in your life, one that enhances your relationships rather than diminishing your sense of self. Remember, you are deserving of kindness just as much as anyone else, and by valuing yourself, you ensure that kindness will continue to be a source of strength and connection rather than a path to ruin. In summary, while kindness is a deeply valued quality that can foster empathy, build trust, and create lasting bonds, it becomes detrimental when given without thought to balance or personal well-being. Kindness, when excessive or offered without boundaries, can lead to emotional exhaustion, self-neglect, and a life filled with unreciprocated relationships where one's value is seen only through acts of service. When kindness becomes synonymous with self-sacrifice, it risks undermining the very self-worth and inner peace that kindness aims to cultivate. Healthy kindness requires a sense of self-respect and the understanding that true generosity does not mean giving to the point of depletion. Kindness should be rooted in genuine compassion, not in a need to gain approval or out of fear of disappointing others. When people feel compelled to prioritize others at all costs, they risk losing sight of their own identity and desires. This can lead to a hollow sense of purpose where kindness, instead of feeling empowering, feels obligatory and burdensome. To ensure that kindness remains a source of strength rather than a source of ruin, it's essential to establish boundaries that protect one's own emotional and physical resources. This means learning to say no when necessary, setting limits that allow for self-care, and recognizing that respecting oneself is just as important as caring for others. Genuine kindness is not only about what we give, but also about fostering healthy, balanced relationships where kindness is valued and therefore, while kindness is undoubtedly a virtue, it must be grounded in self-respect and a balanced approach to remain sustainable. By valuing oneself, one can cultivate a type of kindness that is both enduring and empowering, a kindness that enhances relationships, uplifts others, and nurtures one's own well-being. Only through this balance can kindness truly flourish, becoming a lifelong source of fulfillment and connection rather than a path to self-sacrifice and emotional exhaustion.